The temperatures outside are dropping, and on the ice, things are going up a notch in intensity. That's why on the fantasy hockey source that you need, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, we've got everything from around the world of the NHL covered. On Tuesday's episode, including what's going on in New York and in Ottawa, baby. We'll break it all down for y'all, and let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fantasy takes, NHL news, and daily breading breakdowns. I'm going to spit it out, Steele. That's what you get on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Tuesday edition. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day, Monday through Friday. Wherever you find your favorite content, you can find this podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Start the season big on FanDuel. New customers that get a $5 winning wager can get $150 back in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Interesting little mixed bag of topics for today, Mr. Roden, including two teams that one, I think, we're a little bit more confident in turning it around than the other. We'll talk about the Rangers. We'll do a little fantasy check-in on the Ottawa Senators because there are a number of pieces on this team, Steele, that I think people probably took pretty high that's somewhat not performing up to snuff. And we got injury updates. Kane, Patrik Laine, big-time bets, only 2 games, but we got you covered. Over to you, my friend, because I know this Rangers team has not looked like its dominant self over the last few years. However, still lurking around in the Metro, still loaded with fantasy talent. What are you seeing here from these Rangers, a team that you and I have spoken at length about?
Yeah, I mean, look, they've obviously lost their last 2 games. I'm not as concerned as other people in the hockey community are about this team moving forward. Look, they had some tough games and some tough losses in the month of October. Yeah, they lost 6-3 to the Winnipeg Jets, the best team in the league. A disappointing, embarrassing loss to a very good Edmonton Oilers team, especially when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are firing on all cylinders. So they've still had a pretty decent November. I'm not concerned about them. Obviously, the rumors out there that they are looking to shake things up with their roster. I was fairly surprised with the name of Chris Kreider's name being tossed around there. I wouldn't really expect that since he's been there his entire career. We've heard rumors about Jacob Trouba and them potentially trying to ship his contract somewhere else. Yeah, it kind of changed things up. Looking at what they've done so far this season offensively, I mean, Artemi Panarin has just been a juggernaut for them. Adam Fox doesn't have a goal, but he has 17 assists. He's getting it done with his playmaking, quarterbacking the power play like we know he does. Alexis Lafreniere continues to just show his skill set and the progress that he's made over the 4 to 5 years so far in the National Hockey League. For me, there's really 2 players that stand out right now. Number one, and I've mentioned it before, it's Mika Zibanejad. 4 goals in 19 games, a -10. He's not producing offensively. He's been hesitant. He's been inconsistent with his game. Lack of discipline in the defensive zone as well. And he's been fairly good on both ends of the ice for the last couple of for the last 4 or 5 seasons with the Rangers or throughout his NHL career. Another name, again, Vincent Trocheck, just not producing at the same rate that we saw him and not having that same influence on all aspects of the game and the success of the Rangers, especially over the last 2 years. He also only has 4 goals in 19 games. So a lot of the pressure offensively is being put on Artemi Panarin, Adam Fox. Yes, you're getting some great depth scoring from Lafreniere and Will Cooley, who we just mentioned on the waiver wire targets list. But other than those 4 guys, other than those 3 guys and the phenomenal goaltending they're getting from both Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick, there's a lack of depth scoring right now, and there's a lack of consistency with some of their top guys. I think that's why they're heading this direction of trying to shake things up. Again, we knew the rumors about Jacob Trouba potentially being shipped somewhere else. Shocking that Chris Kreider's in there, but if that is true and if he will be moved by this Rangers team, I think there's a lot of contending teams that would like to add a caliber player like Chris Kreider.
when I look at that situation, and yes, you really hit the nail on the head because, of course, I think it's the tenure there with Chris Kreider. And when I see 9 goals and 0 assists, and I've seen what Chris
Yeah.
Kreider has done in his career in terms of really, in my opinion, being that finisher, being a true goal scorer around the net, knowing how to get to those positions, score timely goals as well for this team. Huge in the playoffs last season, Trocheck as well. But to stay on Chris Kreider, what I see here is maybe this is an opportunity to actually follow through on what this rumor is saying and shake things up. What better way than to send a message into this locker room than to ship out your longest tenured forward, clearly Chris Kreider? That would send a message to the room. That's the only reason why I could see them doing this. Chris Drury in the front office knows what he's doing. Laviolette behind the bench. We like this team. And to kind of back this up here, because, you've covered the fantasy points really nicely with this Rangers team, and which is why I think you'll back me up on this one and say they're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
10th best power play in the NHL so far. They sit right near the top of the league in goals against as well, and a really good penalty kill. I believe the penalty kill, let me bring that up. I think it's like 5th in the NHL. They're 2nd in the NHL. So, not to, beat the dead drum here. Special teams mean good overall teams, and they're good on both. So I think the goals against, Shesterkin in the cage, the balance of the blue line, I could see a move coming, though, Steele. If they continue to put out some bad performances, I still think they're going to be a threat in the playoffs. But if they're going to send a message, and the Trouba rumor, it's been out there for a while. So if Drury's trying to wheel and deal, I could definitely see it happening sooner than later. But I think they're going to turn it around sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, again, I still think they've been very good in the month of November. They had 2 tough losses against 2 very talented teams again in the Winnipeg Jets and Edmonton Oilers. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fans out there of the Rangers saying that they've known this team has been fraudulent or frauds for years now. I'm not that concerned. Again, when you look at the Metropolitan standings, they have 4 games in hand on the New Jersey Devils, who sit in first with 30 points. They're only 5 points behind them right now. So I think there's a little bit, there's an emotional roller coaster going on with this Rangers fan club. Obviously, a lot of people buying into them, and some people just continuing to call them frauds, but they're not out of it. They're going to turn things around. Maybe shaking it up is something they have to do. And if trading someone like Chris Kreider, who's been with this team for the entire career, who is, again, like you said, does all the right things in the right places at the right time, going hard to the net, doing all those things offensively. Maybe that's something that needs to be done. Bringing in some new faces, but I'm not at all concerned about this team. Again, I've been very heavily on the Rangers over the last few years to make it to the Stanley Cup final. So I'm going to continue backing them up until, they show me otherwise with their play. Other than that, I'm still very confident with this team.
And when you have Igor Shesterkin in the cage, fantasy darling, that really goes a long way to securing some of these anxieties, if you will. Speaking of which, a fan base that has quite a bit of it, and I'm not too mad about it, Steele. How the Ottawa Senators doing, everybody? Not too good. And let's talk about it, though, in all seriousness, because it's somewhat intriguing and kind of a parallel to this Rangers team. Special teams, looking at the Ottawa Senators, really good on the penalty kill this season. I believe they're in the top 10. Power play, right around there in the top 10, and I'll confirm those numbers, Mr. Roden. I'm not just going to go all willy-nilly here. Power play, the Ottawa Senators have the 5th best man advantage unit in the NHL. Their special teams is clicking. What I'm looking at, and I'm going to turn it over to you, because obviously there's a lot of fantasy value here, 14th best penalty kill. But the one major issue that I see with this team, and it's probably the most frustrating from a fantasy perspective as well this year, has been the play of Linus Ullmark. 4-7-1, 3.10 goals against, and an .881 save percentage. I know not all of those numbers are to be blamed on him. The back end has had some issues of their own, really kind of boneheaded plays, and you've said this, they make their goaltenders look really bad and kind of leave them out to dry. So I'm fully not putting this on Linus Ullmark by any stretch. Fantasy-wise, he stands out to me as one of the bigger disappointments so far, regardless, because he was taken so high. And this team is going to have to turn it around in a hurry, because when you're looking at that Atlantic division, Leafs cooking, Panthers are what they are, Sabres look better, Lightning are going to be there. They're only 1 point up on Montreal, and Montreal has been terrible. So this Ottawa team, not looking too good right now.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about this Atlantic Division in this episode, covering the Detroit Red Wings, covering the Ottawa Senators, Patrik Laine injury update as well. We'll get to all of that and more after the break.
Right after we give a little bit of love to our friends from Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars awarded in winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible for all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot up to win 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, and that's why you want to be downloading the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the mornings when you can find our episodes. Continuing, though, the disappointing start once again. It seems like a yearly thing now with both the Detroit Red Wings and Ottawa Senators. But like you said, complete agreement here. The standout highlighting disappointment continues to be in the blue paint with both Linus Ullmark and Anton Forsberg. Forsberg's been a little bit better than him, but not tremendous by any tremendous amount. Better than him so far this season. And again, this just seems to be a culture thing now with the Ottawa Senators. They bring in Matt Murray, garbage. They bring in Jonas Korpisalo, garbage. They bring in Linus Ullmark, garbage. It can't all be the goaltending. It's the team. This team is just straight up doo-doo right now. And again, it's disappointing because over the last 2 seasons, both you and I thought this could be a bubble playoff team. This team has talented players. Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle has his scoring touch back. Drake Batherson, your boy. Josh Norris is healthy. His no shoulder concerns right now. Jake Sanderson on the back end. Thomas Chabot. It's been disgusting and ugly hockey for Senators fans out there. I mean, you can't get any worse than what's going on right now. Bottom of the Atlantic Division, alongside the Montreal Canadiens and, of course, the Detroit Red Wings, who we'll get to very, very soon. And the thing is, they're scoring right now from their top 6 is scoring. 9 goals from Stützle, 24 points. 10 goals from Tkachuk, 21 points. 8 from Batherson, 20 points. They're getting some scoring from that top 6 group.
Good season from Claude Giroux as well.
Good season once again. Nice veteran that they added a couple of seasons ago. He continues to really improve. He still got it again. Aging like fine wine out there. Some of these depth guys, Ridley Gregg, disappointing. Michael Amadio, disappointing. Nick Cousins has done nothing. Shane Pinto, 3 points in 12 games. It's ugly in Ottawa right now. Senators fans are disappointed. It's all over Twitter. We've been seeing it. It's been ugly. Again, fantasy-wise, I still think when you've got someone like Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk and Drake Batherson, of course, you're loving life right now. But as an Ottawa Senators fan, it's getting hard to watch.
I was looking at one of our casual or competitive listener leagues. Right now, Yahoo has Brady Tkachuk ranked the first number 1 forward at his position in the fantasy game. And I would say he's pretty close considering, the peripheral category coverage, considering all the penalty minutes he's been taking. By the way, the Ottawa Senators, in terms of penalty minutes taken, they are right up there at the top of the league. They are also up there at the top of the league in terms of goals against per game. They have just been a team that I honestly think, Steele, has been let down by kind of poor lapses in judgment. And I know that's a bit of a generic statement, but one game they look awesome. And then they go on these stretches of looking like a shell of the team we expected them to. And when you ream off all those players that we just reamed off, it gets really disappointing. But at least, I guess, fantasy-wise, those guys are still bringing it. But if you're looking at the standings, and already I know there's quote-unquote lots of time left on the calendar, when you also look at the teams on top of them, they are going to be on the outside looking in sooner than later, and it's going to be too late. You're going to be hoping for a bubble spot at best, which means you're going to have to go through the Carolinas, the Rangers, or the Florida Panthers of the world in the first round. And this team is not beating any of those teams in 7-game series, not to get too far ahead of ourselves. However, when teams struggle fantasy-wise, keep your eyes peeled because right now, yeah, the offense is clicking. But if this team continues to lose games, confidence is going to wane and things can go off the rails. So you got to keep it tight. That's why you're under the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Over to you, though, Mr. Roden. Patty Kane, if you're good, let's talk about these Red Wings. I know he's day-to-day. He's a guy that, considering how good he was last year after being added to the, Detroit Red Wings, 47 points in 50 games. He was a fantasy piece that some guys went out there and got, gals and guys went out there and got in the 6th or 7th round. And 3 goals in 20 games, whoo, baby, that's not nearly going to be good enough. So this is one of those situations that if you're in a pretty shallow league and there's options out there, I might be considering dropping Kane right now and moving on until you see something more from him moving on down the line.
Yeah, he's only rostered at 61% right now on Yahoo. That seems about right for what he's doing. It could definitely drop over the next week or so because of this injury and because of the lack of production offensively. I think this is a team that has just struggled offensively time and time again, sort of the opposite effect of what the Ottawa Senators are going through right now. Their goaltending has actually been very solid. Cam Talbot, 921 save percentage. Alex Lyon, 908 save percentage. Both guys under 2.85 goals against average. So they're getting some really solid goaltending from that duo right there. However, the lack of scoring, sort of what we were seeing with the New York Rangers, is something to be concerned about. Up until two games ago, Lucas Raymond only had 2 goals on the season. Like you said, Patrick Kane only has 3 goals on the season and 20 so far this year. DeBrinket's been good. Dylan Larkin's been good. Lucas Raymond, his playmaking's been good. Other than that, Moritz Seider really hasn't taken that next step in driving plays like we expect him to. Obviously, fantasy-wise, you love the peripheral stats and peripheral categories that he fills out for you, and 10 points in 20 games is not bad whatsoever. I think we just had a lot higher expectations of what this defenseman could do for this organization. Sure. The Yzer plan is not coming to fruition right now. Yeah. Patty Kane being lost is going to hurt them, but they need to depend on some of those other depth guys, Andrew Kopp, JT Compher, some of these guys who can jump into the top 6 group and sort of make a difference at times. Just need some consistent play. So offensively, once again, for this Detroit Red Wings team has been the crucial factor for their lack of success this season.
As always, Mr. Roden knocked it right out of the park. See that one in the 3rd row, because take this one in. When you're taking a look at these stats and you're thinking about teams like the Chicago Blackhawks, who have been really bad, Nashville Predators, who have been embarrassing in the offensive end, and even like teams like the New York Islanders and St. Louis Blues, who we know this year really struggled to score goals, and the Detroit Red Wings have scored less goals than those teams, that's really bad. They are
not good.
Dead last in the NHL in goals for. 49 goals for in 20 games is just not going to be good enough unless you're one of the top defensive squads in the league. And even then, it's not good enough in today's NHL. You sent me that stat on goaltender statistics on the decline. This is a scorer's league. This is a shooter's league. Take a look at Cappy and the boys feasting right now. So that's a concern for this Detroit Red Wings team, and the same argument holds true that we were just talking about with the other teams at the bottom of the Atlantic. With Toronto looking like they are, with Florida looking like they are, Tampa's going to be there. Boston's still up there, and they've looked like a shell of their former self. There is not enough spots up there, and then you got the Sabres looking really good. Right now, these teams are going to need to sincerely turn their games around. And with Patty Kane being out, like I said, I think the fantasy take here is you might need to consider seriously dropping him and moving on. Yeah. But otherwise, these teams are going to have to turn it around in a hurry. And if they don't over this next stretch into the holiday steal, this is going to be a whole different conversation that you and I are having about them, and we can talk about it more as we get there. But let's talk about Patrik Laine right after the break. We'll spit out our bets quick. Only 2 games on the Tuesday board. Steele and I will be here the rest of the weekend, every single week, Monday through Friday, all the way until that Stanley Cup gets lifted. I can't believe we're already talking about that already, Steele. But you know me, baby. I'm fired up to make some futures bets. So let's get there, and the rest of the week we'll be bringing that fantasy fire.
future bets, NHL award bets, big time bets. You can place all of those bets on FanDuel. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need in one place so you can place live bets on the NFL all the time. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place those bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Once again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen every single day. Continue to hammer that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you've been showing us over the course of the 3 years we've been doing this. We're getting close. I believe we're getting close to 3 years. Maybe it's 4 years at this point.
No, coming up on 3.
Coming up on 3. Hey, time's flying right now when you're having fun.
You don't remember our anniversary, bro?
I know the day. I just don't know how many years. It's been a while, but
are we gonna finally do this and maybe for our 3-year anniversary meet in person for the first time? Like, it's got to happen, pal. Let's get it done. Maybe
it's gonna happen. I know, 3 years in the making. We still gotta meet in person, so we're gonna have to get that over the winter break. Of course, we're gonna have to have a couple of drinks over watching the Leaf game.
Boom.
Over the holiday season.
Lock it in.
Big time bets coming up soon. Real quickly, injury update. Patrik Laine is back with the Montreal Canadiens, skating in practice in a normal jersey as well. So no yellow, no contact jersey. He was skating. He was participating in some action, some drills, but in a regular jersey. So that is a very good sign for this Montreal Canadiens team that desperately need him back in the lineup, that desperately need an offensive punch alongside Cole Caulfield. And just form some chemistry right now in that top 6 group. It's still, I believe, going to be at least another week from what Martin St. Louis has said to the media and just, in general on social from seeing today's news on Patrik Laine. But again, keep your eyes for Laine returning to the lineup for the Montreal Canadiens in a week or so.
It's just going to be one of those kind of feel-good stories for this team, even if he just gets back on the ice. That's how bad things have been going for the Montreal Canadiens. Goal differential of -21 is the second worst in the Eastern Conference. And, I've talked to a lot of people that are very dedicated Montreal Canadiens reporters, fans, and otherwise. And look, you and I like to show love to coaches that we like. And Marty St. Louis, in my opinion, is still a really good coach. But from what I'm reading and from what I'm hearing, his approach this season has somewhat changed. And when you just started to really instill the new system last year, and it was about accountability and all these things, and this year he's probably apparently trying to do too much behind the bench, which makes sense considering the pressure, and he is still a relatively new coach. That's going to go badly for a young team who is just starting to really kind of, I'm not going to say figure it out, Steele, but when you saw how they started the season, we were really excited. Sam Montembeault, fantasy-wise, everyone was all over him, and now it's fizzled. Patrik Laine, it's intriguing, of course. Are you going to run out there and immediately add him on the waiver wire? Not unless you're in dire need and you have a spot. It's too risky until you see his deployment, until you see him settle in. Is it going to pay off for the Montreal Canadiens in the short term? It might provide that boost of offense that this team so sorely needs, but it's not going to fix their defensive woes. It's not going to fix the bottom 6. It's not going to fix what's going on in the goaltending area. So I like that we got to bring it up because of the name, and he's just been such a polarizing fantasy piece. But until I see what they do with Laine and I see him back on the ice for real, I'm not going to get too ahead of myself because we've done that far too many times with Laine in his career in these fantasy circles, and I'm not going to be hurt all over again, Steele.
No, we don't want that to happen with Patrik Laine. And of course, obviously our fantasy teams, if you're trying to pick him up or if you already have him stashed away on the IR all season. So, real quickly on Martin St. Louis, I also like him as a coach. I liked him as a player. One of my favorite growing up, watching him, for the Tampa Bay Lightning and obviously the New York Rangers when he spent his time there as well. I'll be honest. I think there's a good chance St. Louis could be the next coach out of a job. if things don't turn around. Like, I mean, he's 3 years in now. Obviously, it's not a great team and a great environment you step into when you first become the head coach of the Montreal Canadiens, but he's had time to work the system, to get things to a better direction. And honestly, if this continues, I just don't see how they continue to keep Martin St. Louis. That can be a conversation for another time, but it's been a difficult season for the Montreal Canadiens. However, that's actually ironic because that's where I'm going with my big time bets.
Segue, baby.
Tuesday
Segue.
Night. Segues all the day, all the time, every day.
Yeah.
2 games on the excuse me, on the schedule for Tuesday night. Over to you, my friend. I gotta get a glass of water again. This
yeah. Take your time. Your throat. The frog is back. That's why the mute button is actually your friend at this point in time. But I got you. And it's 2-game board. 2 tough games here. But I'm clearly looking at the Vancouver Canucks and the Boston Bruins. I got a couple of gut picks, but I'm also thinking that they back up considering what I've seen on the ice. First and foremost, the Boston Bruins have been a little bit of a mitigated, a calming mess. I don't know how to put this lightly because you know how I like to hate on this Boston Bruins team. Yes, they're still hovering around in the division. Yes, they've won 2 games. Speaking of goal differential, they're right there with the Montreal Canadiens at -19. This team needs to figure it out, and they need to figure it out in a hurry, in my opinion, because they're going to get passed over. Anyway, in their last 10 games, this is an even split. Vancouver 5-5-0 against the Boston Bruins. In the last 3 games, they have been really close. Vancouver took it 3-2. Boston took the previous one 3-1. So I'm going to spit this out quick. Same game parlay. Canucks money line. I think this is going to be a low-scoring, close game. Lankinen's been getting blown up, but Swayman's going to be better in this one, and I think keep this one under 6.5. And I'm going to go to their talisman here, Quinn Hughes, who has 15 assists in the season in 19 games. He's gone 2 games without one, though. So I think you're going to get really good odds here for an assist. Quinn Hughes, anytime assist is where I'm at, Steele, for my lock of the night. In his career, 7 games against the Bruins, 5 assists. Hit me with the Quinn Hughes anytime assist. If you're not feeling the first 2, which are more of a gut pick because I don't got a lot to go on tonight, and with a low bet in the same game parlay, no big deal. But if you're liking any, lock of the night, Quinn Hughes anytime assist. That's by far my favorite pick.
Well, I like that you're highlighting this game because I'm looking at the Montreal Canadiens and Utah Hockey Club. I'm going to have to get some Buckleys after this. I'm going to have to
spit it out quick
on that. Spit it out quick indeed. Same game parlay for me in this matchup. First pick, I'm taking the Canadiens on the money line at +118. They're at home. Both teams are struggling right now. They're both 3-6-1 in their last 10 games. But I just like the Canadiens at home right now. Tough loss against the Toronto Maple Leafs for Utah on Sunday. So I like the plus money line for the Canadiens at +118. I'm also taking the +112 over 6.5 in this matchup. I think it's going to be another barn burner, something sort of along the lines of what we saw in that Montreal game against the Buffalo Sabres earlier this month. And then I'm locking that with my lock of the night, Cole Caulfield, anytime goal. He's been up there all season long in that scoring race for the Rocket Richard. 12, 13 goals so far on the season. By far been their best player, most consistent offensive piece. Same game parlay once again. Canadiens money line +118. Habs Utah over 6.5 +112. And then you're probably going to get some plus money for Caulfield anytime goal. That will be my lock of the night.
Really like the over in that one. I think what I'll just do and cop out and play it safe, just hearing this and thinking out loud, I'm going to go Quinn Hughes and I'm going to add it with that over, and I'm going to just take those 2 picks and let's hammer time, baby. And let's keep rolling with these picks. You and I have had a pretty good run here over the last week and a half, and I'd like to keep that rolling. It's Hanukkah season. It's Christmas season. My wife's birthday's coming up. Still, things ain't cheap around here. You know what I'm saying? So we got to hit some of these bets and let's keep it rolling. Shout out to everyone there holding down the pod, though. I see you in the comments. We see you in the DMs, Instagram, all over the place, and we appreciate it.
We do appreciate all the listeners tuning in Monday through Friday on your favorite podcast platform, on YouTube, following us on Twitter and Instagram, just showing us all that support and love. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. Making it your first listen every single day. For your second listen, though, make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find it in the link in the description below, so you don't have to go searching for it. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, from both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with your bets tonight, with your weekly matchups, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow for another episode.
Peace.